'cause you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. Or when you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. Might be coming down for sure.
To have an agreement, we actually need to have an offer and an acceptance. We've spent our time looking at an offer. Now let's have a look at what we need to have a valid acceptance. In essence, we need three things. We need acceptance to be communicated, we need acceptance to be unqualified, and we need acceptance to be made in reliance of the offer. They're the three rules that we concentrate on. Let's look at them in a bit more detail. In terms of definition, the offeree accepts the offer when they indicate by words and again by actions, so it can be implied, but when they indicate that they're willing to immediately enter into a legally enforceable contract with the offeror on the terms offered. So we've got this meeting of minds that we talked about that we need for agreement, the agreement on the terms. Once the offeree accepts the offer, an agreement has been reached. They can't change their mind, which matches the rule for not being able to revoke the offer. So once we have offer and acceptance, we have agreement. As I mentioned at the outset, a valid acceptance needs to be unqualified, communicated, and made in reliance of the offer. If it doesn't meet these three conditions, there's no agreement because we don't have a meeting of minds. For instance, if you qualify an offer, you really haven't actually accepted. There's no agreement because the offeror would have to agree to your qualification. So there's no meeting of minds. If it's not communicated, there's no meeting of minds, right? Because the offeror doesn't know about it if you haven't communicated it to them. Okay. And there's no meeting of minds if you accepted but not in reliance of the offer. How can you accept something you don't know about? There's no meeting of minds. Okay, so again, these three things are essential to get this meeting of minds, which is what we want in terms of agreement. So the two cases we're going to concentrate on are Feldhaus and Bindley and the Crown and Clark. So let's look at Feldhaus and Bindley, which had to do with the auctioning of a horse. It's actually a kind of complex case in terms of what was going on factually. There was this guy, Feldhaus, who wanted to buy a horse off his nephew. And his nephew, he had this interchange with the nephew. The nephew was moving away from where he was, so he got an auctioneer to sell all his stuff, and he told the auctioneer not to sell the horse. He was going to sell to his uncle. But the auctioneer Bindley made a mistake and accidentally sold the horse. So now the uncle is trying to sue the auctioneer for selling the horse when he shouldn't have. In order to be able to do that, the uncle has to show he owns the horse. So it's about this sale of a horse. F is buying a horse from his nephew. Okay. And what actually happens? Well, there's an interchange between the uncle and the nephew about the price, right? It wasn't totally agreed what the price was. But at the end of the discussion about buying the horse, the uncle says, if I hear no more, I consider the horse mine at, and then he had a price. Okay. So that's what's happened. Now the nephew actually was going to sell to the uncle at that price. That's what's in play here. However, the question becomes, has there been a valid acceptance? Because at this stage, the uncle is the offeror. He's offering to buy the horse at this price. And the nephew says nothing and does nothing that the uncle could take as acceptance. So acceptance was not communicated here. And this actually makes sense. Okay, the offeror, so the offeror cannot insist that silence is acceptance. Okay, so I can't say to you, I'm offering you to sell my computer. I offer to sell my computer to you for $500. If I don't hear anything by Friday, I will consider that you have bought it. Right? I can't make you like that. That would be just wrong if I could make you have to do something to reject an offer. Okay? Instead, you need to do something. Right? You need to accept it. Now, notice this is subtly different. If the offeree says silence. So if the uncle had have said, I offer to sell you my horse at this price, and the nephew had have said, if you don't hear from me by Friday, consider the horse yours, then it would be a valid contract because the offeree is the one insisting on silence, not the offeror. Okay. So if the offeror suggests silence is acceptance, that's not valid because acceptance must be communicated. The second case we've got is the Crown against Clark, and this involved a person who was well known to police. They got interviewed about a murder, and as part of that interview, they gave information to the police that led to the arrest of the murderer. Then this person who was assisting police with their inquiries, they weren't a nice person. They actually then tried to claim the reward that was on offer for information leading to the arrest of the criminal. And the court said they weren't allowed to get the reward because when they gave the information to the police, right, about the murderer, it was so that they could get out of suspicion, so that they could get out of the questioning and not be charged. They didn't do it to get the reward. In fact, they didn't even know about the reward when they gave the information. So that case is authority for the rule that acceptance must be made in reliance of the offer, right? You've got to do or accept, you've got to do what the offer wants or accept the offer by knowing about it. If you don't know about it, there's no meeting of minds. Okay, so let's go through these rules just in a little bit of detail. The offeree must accept the offer without modifying it. That's what it means by unqualified. So if you modify the offer, it's not the original offer. A qualified acceptance modifies the offer, and so there's no meeting of minds. Instead, it's very likely to be a counteroffer, and we know that that's a rejection of the original offer, and we do not have a contract. Second, acceptance must be communicated. Acceptance isn't complete until the offeree communicates acceptance to the offer. It's at that point we have a meeting of minds. The offeror cannot insist failure to respond is acceptance. If the offeror specifies a mode of acceptance, then acceptance must be made in that matter. If no method is specified, ordinary trade or custom is what is required. Acceptance must be made in reliance of the offer. Only the offeree, but remember you can make an offer to the world at large, but only an offeree can accept the offer. Acceptance must be in reliance of the offer. A person can't accept something they weren't offered, and they can't accept something they don't know about. Why? There's no meeting of minds. So there are three key rules for acceptance. If we have an offer and we have acceptance, then we've got agreement. If we've got agreement, we've got the first element we need to actually have a contract. The next element we need is an intention to create legal relations.